Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Shafi'u, Suleiman. Combined votes of the northern states totaling about 5.5 million out of 8.8 million garnered by President Tinubu in the 2023 election placed him on the vintage position to defeat three other candidates to win the race to the presidency. Now, statistics from INEC indicate that the Northeast and Northwest gave Tinubu the highest votes in the election, apparently due to the Muslim-Muslim ticket sentiment and the resolve by the APC governors in the region to queue behind his bid for the #1 seat. Though the then candidate Tinubu met with northern stakeholders and pledged to work on the region's charter for socio-economic development at different fora, 1 year into his administration, the initial pessimisms about a seeming lack of a development agenda for the North, according to critics, appears legitimate. On Daily Politics tonight, we ask, what are the good governance indicators for a region that gave President Tinubu more than 60% of victory? What are the bases for the lamentations coming out of the northern region over alleged marginalization over appointments, resource allocation, and general well-being? Is President Tinubu neglecting other regions in favor of his southwest through alleged nepotism, economic empowerment, and development priorities? Now, joining us to provide answers to these poses is Comrade Iliyasu Gadu, a public affairs analyst based in Abuja. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, Barka Sallah to all our viewers, and thanks to being here.
But before we commence our conversation, here are some tidbits. The presidency has reacted to a report published in the New York Times criticizing the Nigerian economy as facing the worst trajectory in a generation. Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, responded on Sunday to the report by Ruth McLean and Ismail Awa. According to the presidency, the feature story titled Nigeria Confronts Its Worst Economic Crisis in a Generation and published on June 11 reflected the typical predetermined, reductionist, derogatory, and denigrating way for media establishments have reported on African countries for decades. And a palpable tension caused by the ongoing succession crisis enveloped the 23 local government areas of Rivers State on Monday, sparking fears of possible outbreak of violence among residents of the oil-rich state. At the Gebe local government area secretariat, some youths were seen blocking the main entrance, chanting songs in solidarity and demanding the departure of the council's chairman, Michael John Williams. The youth vowed to remain at the gate till Wednesday to stop Williams and other elected officials from gaining access to the office. We'll now take a short break, and when we return, our conversation commences. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Happy Eid al-Adha to the entire Muslim Ummah, and of course, specifically our viewers around the globe. Comrade, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks too for having me.
Right. Let's start with the tidbits first. The first one, presidency reacting to the report, which suggested that, the country is going through its worst economic trajectory for generations. And the reaction, the presidency is saying that this is one of such reports that are denigrating, that are putting, the African continents, or countries like ours on the edge. What's your reaction to that?
I think my reaction to that is that the government has overreacted to the issue. I expect the government to provide facts and figures to debunk the report by the New York Times. New York Times is, by the way, one of the most respected newspapers in the world, and it has set a store for reporting based on facts. Sometimes the report might be, tempered to suit where it's coming from. But as for facts, and as for this report, you can't fault the fact that the New York Times is bringing out, which is to say that yes, Nigeria is going through its worst economic circumstances, and that is true. Even, I mean, it's something commonplace in Nigeria, in the streets of Nigeria. Everybody is talking about the harsh economic conditions. So it's not something that, it's something that the New York Times have cooked up illegally or falsely and reporting it to embarrass the government. It is actually what the New York Times has found out through its own investigations, and it's bringing it out there for the government to take corrections. Even before the New York Times came up, there's been reports, even within Nigerian papers, and there have been statements, objective statements by Nigerians to the effect that this economy, this situation we're living in, is very, very volatile, has the potential to cause a lot of problems. And the government needs to, rather than the government to react in the way that it did, it must accept some of the facts. These are facts based on figures. The National Bureau of Statistics have been talking about inflation. The latest report has it that it's at 33%.
That is
going up, yeah.
The food inflation is around 40%.
So this is as late as May. By now, definitely it's going to be more than that. So if the New York Times report is based on some of these reports that are even generated from within Nigeria, then the government should not behave in a paranoid way. Look at it, go back to the drawing board, and do what Nigerians have been asking the government. Review some of these policies.
Okay. Yeah, the same government, perhaps a couple of weeks ago, was also celebrating, certain projections given by IMF and World Bank and all of that. These are also foreign, institutions, but why should the government be selective? There are certain reports or certain projections coming from the West or coming from the foreign establishments that government celebrate, but on the flip side, government take exception.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any reasons for cherry picking here, because that's what the government is doing, is cherry picking some of the reports that favor it, which also are questionable, in some respect. The government takes credit for those, and some of the reports that are critical, objectively critical, it goes haywire, to the extent that it begins to more or less be paranoid. And this is one example of that. I mean, the report, I have read the report, and it's based on facts on ground, based on reports from various Nigerian sources.
Yeah.
And
I
arriving
also
at
went
this
through it. I think it was anchored based on the two policy choices of the president.
Exactly.
It talked about the removal of subsidy and how it affects the economy.
Exactly.
And the well-being of the people. It also talks about the exchange rate, the floating of the exchange rate and so on. Okay, we're moving on. Looking at the crisis in River State, is adding up to the existing crisis, power struggle, if you like, between the incumbent governor and his predecessor. Now we're having local governments, also chairman tenure coming to an end, and then youths taking over some of the local governments and trying to create trouble.
Well, I must say that, for me, River State is a state after my heart. I lived there for over 10 years, and have very good relationship with a lot of people in River State. And when the crisis broke out between the past governor, Nyesom Wike, who is now the FCT minister, and Simi Fubara, I knew that, if it's not handled well, it may morph into something very serious. And it's so far, some of these things are manifesting, because the gap between the governor, incumbent governor, and Wike FCT, who is, the man at the center of the other side of the equation, is quite widening. The governor is trying to consolidate his position as governor, and Wike is trying to feel that, the governor is not, is not trying to, implement some of the agreements that have been agreed upon between him and
the gentleman.
But I believe that the ground is shifting gradually under Wike. And the people of Rivers State are saying, look, we don't want more.
Is it interference?
Yeah, we don't want more interference. Let Fubara, distraction. Let Fubara rule the state and provide the dividends, and let Mr. Wike, allow him to do what he wants to do. And the litmus test in this relationship now will come with the local governments, because then now.
A particular reference here is the Degema local government chairman Williams. The youths were chanting slogans, celebrating his departure and all of that. Could it be also tied to the bigger crisis in the state?
Yeah, because Degema has Degema as the the capital, so to speak, and you have Abonema, and then you have places like Soku, Bukuma, and the rest of them. It's a state that is
Buguma also.
Buguma is in Asari Toru, while Degema has Degema has Bakana, Tombia, and a few others. Sorry to make that mistake, but it's an honest mistake.
Right.
So this is a symbol of the crisis to come, because the governor wants to have a hand on who becomes the local government chairman in the 23 local governments of Rivers State.
And this is what perhaps the federal government is fighting now through that court proceeding. The Supreme Court has set a date, to rule on that. The need to free the local governments from the grip, of the governors.
Exactly.
Deciding who becomes, who chairs the councils, and then how resources are being allocated.
Yes, and so that's why, in anticipation of that, the two gladiators in this case are trying to see how they could place their people in the seats in the local governments. Rivers State has 23 local governments, from Ogba Egbe Mandoni right down to Boni on one stretch, upland. And Boni is in the riverine areas, the Ijo part. And then Ogba Egbe Mandoni is in the upland areas, Ahoda, Emohua, places like Eche and Omuma and the rest of them.
And the tribal configuration.
Yes, the tribal configurations
also play a role.
Exactly. So it's something that has to be watched very closely, because it has a tendency to create tensions, and that could even morph into much more serious issues, and perhaps maybe make the state ungovernable. We hope it doesn't go beyond that, but you have to really do something about it.
All right, okay. While the authorities there and perhaps those at the center address that, we now delve into our conversation proper. The topic, the North under President Bola Tinubu. You've had the introduction, how things are playing out. You happen to be also a member of the opposition. You contested under the platform of the SDP, I think, is it?
No, People's Redemption Party.
PRP.
Yes.
For you aspire for the Senate.
Yep.
Yes. As an opposition member, now let's look at it from that point of view. What's your assessment of the present administration, President Bola Tinubu in particular, handling of the complexities of the country, handling of the diversities of the country, and perhaps managing, those concerns raised against the previous administration of alleged nepotism and all of that? That has been the song before now. Has it managed it well?
Well, before we answer this question, in fact, if we want to answer the question properly, appropriately, we need to crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
And the numbers say that President Bola Tinubu got in the last election a little under 9 million votes.
That's right.
To enable him to win. And out of that 9 million votes, a little under 9 million votes, the votes he got from the three northern regions, geopolitical regions, amounted to about 5.5 million, which is quite substantial. And it constitutes about roughly 60% or 2/3 of the votes that he got, and that those votes were enough to tip him over his opponent.
Yeah.
And that's Abubakar Atiku, who came second.
Two of them from the north, actually.
Yeah, two of them.
Abubakar and Rabiu Kwankwaso also from the north.
Exactly, and Rabiu Kwankwaso. So it was something that was outstanding. I mean, it emphasized and re-emphasized the North's, commitment to building a consensus, building national unity, because it doesn't stop the North from voting for Atiku, and Atiku is eminently qualified to be voted in the North because he has so many, references to his credit.
Yeah.
So
I talked about the influence, if you like, or the impact of the Muslim ticket. I also talked about, the resolution by the
northern
APC governors.
So the northern APC governors were more than, they had more than returned the favor to Tinubu on the basis that, look, Tinubu had been quite, he's been quite supportive of a northern candidate.
Yeah.
And so before the elections, Tinubu was heard saying, look, it's his own time and he needed to be compensated for supporting a northern candidate in the name of Buhari, Muhammadu Buhari, who had tried several times not to get involved with his, with his influence and involvement. It was able to get Buhari over the line. So for that, he, was talking about naturally a kind of something. And then
succeed.
The northern establishment obliged him. Not only did they intervene strongly to ensure that Tinubu got the votes, or in fact, whatever that was being planned by some people, they went through and said, look, we don't want, and they really broke ranks with.
They stood their ground that the right thing must be done.
Exactly. Then they now returned the favor with that amount of votes, which is about 5.5 billion, which is almost 2/3 of the total votes that got Tinubu over the line. Now, it is the issue. Of course, they should expect some return for that, because
but they are not the only people that voted for him. The South, he was also able to get over 1 million votes, perhaps from the Southwest, his region, and then others, and so on. Put together, around 3.3 million there.
Which is not up to what the North gave him. He even lost 2 states in the Southwest. He lost Lagos,
including his home. Residential state, that is Lagos,
and his own original home state, which is Osun State. He lost those 2 states, and these are very critical states in the Southwest, because Osun is a big state.
I think he lost Osun to PDP, right?
Yeah, he lost Osun to PDP,
and then Lagos to Labour Party.
So, the northern establishment has every right to expect that Tinubu, having returned the favor to Tinubu, they expect that that they have every right to expect that Tinubu would also look on the North with favor.
Yeah, but the question I ask has to do with managing the complexities. Perhaps in trying to be fair to all, some people feel that certain things are not done the way they wanted. But again, let's look at appointments, for instance. Even though there are allegations around nepotism and so on, if you look at certain sectors of the economy, certain sectors of this country, or for instance, security, largely is in the hands of northerners, or maybe perhaps for obvious reason, insecurity is more like a problem of the North. Put together, if you look at in the last 1 year, the casualty figure coming from, the killings by non-state actors, North account for around 70 to 80% of the casualties. It means insecurity is substantially in this part of the country. And now, looking at putting the right people in the right places, he has almost handed over the security architecture.
No, I think, let me answer your last questions. I think the issue of whether Tinubu has been able to manage the complexity and diversity of this country is a moot question. And the truth about it is that he has not been able to do that. effectively.
What are the parameters?
And okay, let me just give
basis?
you.
Yeah.
In fact, this accusation is not even coming from the north. It's even coming from the southwest. A lot of people in the southwest are saying most of the appointments that Tinubu has made in the southwest are actually Lagos-based people or people.
Some talk about the Lagos, but the people he worked with while he was governor.
Well, that's why they're called the Lagos people. I mean, because a lot of them might come from other states in the southwest, but they were more domesticated in Lagos. That's where they have most of their businesses, their presence, and all that. And then that is within the southwest. Now, if you look at the northwest, or rather the entire country, you know, for somebody, for instance, in the north that got that amount of votes, which was, you know, critical, game-changing for him.
It was a constellation, actually, because there were, you know, at that point the race was hot. He was just looking up, perhaps, to the north,
and the north obliged him pointedly and didn't give him any reason to feel, you know, that something was amiss.
Yeah, and northwest and northeast in particular.
Exactly. So for that reason, and even North Central to a large extent. Yeah. So for that reason, if they expected that Tinubu should, compensate them, so to speak, for giving out, for turning out, you know, this amount of votes, it was proper. But what they got out of it, it's not there. Let's go sectorally.
Who got now? Because, you know, there's a difference, you know, a thin line between the political class who are claiming to be the ones that midwife the success, perhaps, and then the ordinary people who actually voted. So who has now felt, you know, not properly compensated?
First of all, the economic policies of his government are felt more by the northern masses than anybody else.
Positively or negatively?
Negatively, because this economy is a money-run economy. And when you begin to make policies that raise the prices of things beyond the ordinary man, especially in the north, who ekes out living out of his meager businesses or whatever he's doing, you are actually sending him to poverty, and this is manifesting more in the north. Because what he's doing now...
Are you looking at the number in terms of those below the poverty line? The 133, you know, multidimensional.
There are more. Even before this government came to power, poverty was more prevalent in the north than anywhere in the country. Now, with the introduction of these policies, which are inflationary, which are, very, very, of serious and negative effect on the people, you are putting more and more people out of you are putting more and more people into the poverty line, and that itself has, multiply effect in the security, because a lot of people now are saying, look, hey, the economy is taking a toll on my resources. I can't have food to eat. Farming
is crime an option now?
That itself creates condition for the crimes you are talking about, because people who are desperate, who cannot afford a meal a day, and that is because of this deleterious effect of these economic policies of President Tinubu.
So if I understand, it is exacerbating the already, difficult situation in terms of insecurity.
Now, if you go through the streets, the people at the receiving end, more at the receiving end of Tinubu's economic policies that the New York Times talk about, are the North. Because then, a lot of them are falling into poverty. A lot of them cannot go into their farms to produce the food that we need to eat, the tomatoes that people are talking about, and all that. And so lots of them have now left the farmlands to come into the cities or towns for safety. And those towns too are getting more and more unsafe. So they have left the farmlands. All the little, agricultural, produce and businesses they used to do, those market towns, are being deserted.
The local economy has been crippled.
So at the end of the day, what is now replacing the local economy is the crime economy, and that is more of effect in the north than any part of Nigeria. So at the end of the day, the north is suffering a double whammy, so to speak, and that double whammy is based on the fact that we voted, because most of the votes that Tinubu is hungering, or any politician is hungering, comes from the people of the North. They are the ones who can stand patiently on the queues to vote.
But some, you know, if you go through the social media, you find some people saying that the Northerners are the architect of their problem. You know, they go for sentiment rather than, you know, looking at the right, choices, perhaps sentiments along along religious line, sentiment along, you know, political party lines and what have you.
I think that is gratuitous, very, very gratuitous. People who hold that view are gratuitous. I mean, you are trying to you know, insult people who took a choice, who made a choice for national unity, for consensus, who made a choice for their own choice out of their own conviction, and the beneficiaries of this choice by the northern masses are the ones turning around again to pour insults on the North. That is gratuitous, because at the end of the day, all the political permutations is based on the fact that northern elements, are the ones who are going to provide the votes that will make that whoever wants to win the elections to win it.
Yeah, let's look at the charter. Perhaps, you know, there were pessimism earlier coming from some very critical minds, those objective minds. I remember at some point a very vocal, you know, woman activist,
political
activist, Ajana Jatu, did mention that the reason why she quit the party was because one-on-one, she realized that the president doesn't have a blueprint for the North. Even though the presidency came out, the handling the information of the party then came out to deny that. But then, shortly after that, we've also seen the Northern Elders Forum coming out to say that we regretted voting for Tinubu. You know, lamentations upon lamentations. Are they justifiable?
I think they are, because, Hajiya Naja, God bless her, said in a public statement, she said she sat one-on-one with President Tinubu, that is candidate Tinubu at the time, and said, okay, yeah, I'm here. Can you tell us what you have, what plans you have for the North? These are legitimate questions. Because she is a woman leader or political leader in her own right. And she has, she asks legitimate questions, because everywhere in the world, people do those kind of horse trading. Now, I represent these sort of people, and I can guarantee you some votes along with my colleagues.
What do you have for us?
What do you have? It's legitimate. So if Tinubu said it was mum about it, then it showed clearly that he didn't have any political...
in her words, he said he has none. If she has anyone, she can present.
So that shows to you that ab initio, President Tinubu did not have any plans for the North. And that whatever plans he has are for a certain part of the country, which is the Southwest, where he comes from.
But he had a lot of interface, you know, before the election with stakeholders, you know, professional groups, political groups, and all of that, including the Northern Elders Forum. I remember he was at the Area House where he had an interface with this northern leaders or so, you know, and also he had an interface with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, which represents, you know, the larger interests of the, you know, the productive class, if I should put it that way, or those running the industries and so on and so forth. And there was a blueprint given to him, even by the Northern Elders Forum, and the groups themselves presented what they feel should form the basis of his intervention when he becomes president. And before then, there have been clear issues articulated. Himself also, admits some of them. The insecurity was very prevalent and was very obvious everywhere. He said it, at different campaign grounds, that once he come on board, he would deal with insecurity head on. So, again, looking at the collapsed industries and so on, I remember they told him about the
textile industries
and all of that. So, is it to say that some of the concerns of the region were not channeled properly or articulated properly, or is it that the president, candidate then Tinubu, when he became president, abandoned them.
These are typical campaign gimmicks by politicians. They will promise the earth just to get elected, and of course, especially if the sound bites, are quite attractive, which they were anyway. At the time they met with the northern elders, and they thought they were dealing with somebody who really was going to walk the talk. But as it transpired, you could see that the moment he shut the door, he got the presidency, he shut the door at those plans. And in any case, we already know before that happened that he didn't have any plans for the North. Because then we could see what is happening. There was no attempt to sit down realistically after he took over power, to sit down realistically with northern leaders of thought, to sit down and say, okay, I'm back here with you to tell you that yes, I'm coming here to try to together, let's sit down and talk about what are the issues, and let's articulate some of the strategies that we can use to defeat some of the burning issues in the North: insecurity, economic issuue,
out of school children.
Yeah, out of school children.
At some point,
no,
one of the critical issues.
He didn't do that. All he did was to look at, I'll appoint people, they will take care of it. And whether these people are doing the right thing or not, it doesn't seem to be a matter of his concern. It's like, okay, I've appointed people, let them go and take care of you. But his strategy, what he has in form of strategic development
But
plans,
who does it better than those who know where the shoe pinches? For instance, Minister of Defense from the Northwest, Jigawa in particular, Minister of State Defense from Zamfara State, which is, the front line.
The front line state in the insecurity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what
yeah, but it's like you give something with the right hand, you take it from the left hand.
How?
For instance, you are creating economic policies that exacerbate this insecurity.
But these economic policies are not limited to the North. These are national policies.
Yeah, but these policies, let's look at it comparatively. The money, the projects that are being spent, that are being implemented, or the money being spent
resource allocation.
Resource allocation is more to the southwest.
How can you justify that?
The projects, look at the Lagos-Calabar road, for instance. That's a huge
superhighway.
And look at the transfer of banking, facilities. Look at the policies. The policies that already are being implemented favor the banking elite of the southwest. And what we are having today...
You mean the monetary policies, coming from the central bank? Or is it that there is any specific policy that was meant to, place the banking sector ahead of others?
No, look at it this way. Let me give you an example. It is reported that 60% of the resource allocation in Nigeria, even look at the budgets, that's what caused a lot of brouhaha in the state, in the Senate.
The Ningi.
Yes,
whistleblowing.
About 60% of resource allocation through the budgetary actually was allocated to the southwest. Specifically, Lagos State took a large chunk of it. Now, what?
But isn't that just anyway? Isn't that justifiable?
Yeah, but
Lagos
is already a money resource-based area. Lagos alone, it's already how do I put it now? It's already a bankable area. Now, where you need
thinking about 50th largest economy.
Exactly. So where you need to develop, where people need to feel the impact of the government, is those areas. Those areas that are becoming poor,
economically
disadvantaged. We used to have even in countries like America and all that, they always have special programs for disadvantaged states economically. Now let me give you an example. A hotel establishment in Lagos, the revenue it generates is much more than what a state generates in the Northeast. I stand to be corrected.
Well, but this some will say efforts, individual efforts. When Lagos economy was being repositioned, if you like, it was done by the then governors sustainably.
Yeah, but what we're saying is that
what stops other governors from other states to do the same?
Already since 1861, Lagos had a head start over all other parts of Nigeria. It became the point where most of the money, most of the import and export of Nigeria was situated.
Due to the presence of the port.
Exactly.
Perhaps,
So there have been attempts over the years to try to diversify some of this, you know.
Okay, are you talking about the dry inland
Exactly.
projects, you know?
Exactly.
I know a number of them were initiated.
Exactly.
By, I think, late Yaradua administration. It was, you know, taken over by the previous government and then even completed. Kaduna was completed at some point. Kano too, I understand, was completed. There were also others in Puntua and in Jos, you know. But nothing has been heard of them.
No, because you see, the Lagos has been consistently, since 1861, consistently enjoying the prodding of the federal governments of Nigeria, previous governments. So it has been, you know, it has been a consistent policy of encouraging Lagos to play that role in Nigeria. Because the railway lines, look at the railway lines in Nigeria, they run from south to the north. And whatever is evacuated from the north goes down to Lagos. And it creates an economy in Lagos, which makes it possible for insurance, financial institutions to flourish, because they finance the trade. They insure the trade, whether it's coming in or going in. So,
but most of it is for value addition. What stops perhaps the counterparts in the northern part of the country to also do the same, try to do XYZ in terms of getting investments for value addition, you know. For instance, Sokoto is known for onions, you know, Kano is known for tomato and all of that, rice, actually all the northern states.
Yeah, to a large extent.
So why is it that, you know, there's this failure to add value to what that is being produced? Take one critical example, rice. You know, at some point there was a project between Kebbi and Sokoto, Lagos.
Lake rice.
Lake rice.
Yeah.
Rice is produced in Kebbi, but it's shipped, you know, to Lagos for value addition.
Yes.
Does that make any economic sense?
No. What happened in that case is, okay, when rice became so expensive for people to purchase in Lagos, the idea was, okay, let us go inward. Let us try and see areas where we can get this rice and then help to produce the process. It was a good project, but then somehow it fell out. And the reason is, along the line, if you now turn into this process of local production, you are going to now undercut the people who are used to importing from abroad. And by that, you are going to now create, some kind of fall down in terms of economic, influence of the people who that in Lagos, the export and import people. So, but then it was not sustained.
Yeah, but looking at, because when you look at the center, you also need to look at the states, the subnationals. You are using Lagos as an example, and everyone knows, some of the reasons why Lagos economy is booming. Infrastructure is being provided on sustainable basis. There is access, to imports and what have you, and export and all of that. There is also sustainable power generation and distribution, for instance. Up north, industries have collapsed, and so on. Power generation is abysmally low, and is one of the reasons, perhaps. But then, now that some of these things have been decentralized, so to speak, states can now generate. What stops, states from coming up with independent power projects to power some of these collapsed industries, to also create an enabling environment for investors to come in, do infrastructure, provide electricity supply, work to have security, and then you get investors.
You are quite right. To some extent, yes, you have to place some of the issues on the table of the governors, especially northern states and other states in the country, because they have, to a very large extent, let's admit, it's not just the problem of the federal government and of Tinubu alone, but they should have taken that initiative too and said, look, hey, we are not just going to wait for the federal government to do that. for us, we should do some initiatives of our own to be able to help some of the issues, like the issue of out of school children, the issue of even infrastructure. You don't have to wait for the government to do that. You know, you need to be able to say, look, we have to tackle this project.
Recently, Kano is declaring state of emergency, but what would it change? You know, substantial number of these out of schools coming from,
and there has to be some reform of the social structure in the north to be able to put up, because Lagos, apart from the fact that Lagos has also taken advantage of some of these issues and gone with it, flown with it, the southwest especially. So in the north, it's like once you take one step, you take also two steps also back again. So some of the progressive policies that, for instance, were enacted during the Rimi administration in Kano. I was there in Kano, and Kaduna and other places have now gone back. In fact, have now regressed. Some of the policies that the first republic, I mean the first set of states, 12 states, implemented to try to create a social reforms in terms of education and all that, have now regressed. But in states like Lagos and all that, it was sustained and even improved during the Jakonde, and then from there, all that. Yes, you have to give that credit to that. It actually depends on the kind of mentality of the governors, of the elites you have. But again, the people of the north said, okay, we are handicapped in this sense, and we feel that somebody like Tinubu, who has a track record of doing positive things in Lagos, now looking for a governor, to become the president, will give him the votes and possibly expect that he will at least initiate, stimulate some of the developments.
But we had a president for 8 years, who failed to do some of those things. There's this concern, But then you talked about something very fundamental, resource allocation and distribution. Let's use the super highway, the Lagos Calabar whatever highway. About 15 trillion naira was said to have been budgeted for it. We have representatives, so to speak, at the Federal Executive Council. States have appointments. Ministers come from the northern states. And they are very much aware, perhaps, of some key projects initiated, by previous administration. Take, for instance, the Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano pipeline, gas pipeline, which was meant, to revive, if you like, or to resurrect those industrial hubs that collapsed. That's one. And then provide electricity, power, and even gas, to the people for consumption and for other businesses. That is nowhere, so to speak. It has been left in limbo. Again, the Mambila hydro project, and the oil exploration in the Kolmani, and several others. Earlier we were talking about the hinterland ports, the dry ports. All of these are developmental initiatives. What stops those within the Federal Executive Council to raise a concern? You're spending 15 trillion naira, yet perhaps maybe we need a trillion naira or two to actualize the AKK pipeline. Maybe they need half of that money to get to exploit, the Kolmani oil resources. What stops someone from doing that?
Yeah, I quite agree with you. I mean, it's not enough to say Tinubu has not done anything. It's also to admit that our elites in the north have not done their own part of
the bargain.
Right. Which is to also help us, because even in Lagos, a lot of what
and they have substantial basis or background to do that. Yeah. They have the numbers.
Yeah.
And they can talk about the contribution.
Exactly. Even in Lagos, it was an initiative more of the private personalities, people who now picked up some of these initiatives and ran with it, and then set the agenda, and the Lagos State government and Lagos State environment provided it. And then it also created a situation where other people from other parts of Nigeria will come and add to the value of what was happening economically, commercially, and all that in Lagos, and by virtue of that, spreading to the immediate area in the southwest. Now, this should have happened in the north. When we had Ahmadu Bello, during the time of Ahmadu Bello, something like that was in the offing in the north,
right.
And that should have been continued. But as soon as Ahmadu Bello was not on the scene, left the scene, then the various
those that
elites, including governors and all that, didn't see any reason to continue. So they saw it as a reason to sort of build themselves up, provide for themselves, and then leave the people in limbo, as you said. So now the people in the north, that's when I say people, I'm talking about the general masses, are left in limbo. They do not know who to trust. They do not know.
Are they actually sold? Because some are also raising this concern that perhaps the people, conscience was based on those sentiments, and then they were teleguided to do what they did, perhaps, and then now the lamentations.
Yeah, of course, we cannot divorce that from the reality, because I monitored some of the campaigns, and it was based not on issues, not on ideas, but more on religious inclination of Muslim ticket and all that. And you begin to ask yourself, is this thing about religion or about our lives, about improving our lives, about improving the desperate, getting away from the desperate situation of poverty, of lack of infrastructure and all that. And I would have wanted our elites to sit down in a town hall and say, look, we are not going to make any decision yet on electing who and who, but we want to see a blueprint. What blueprint you have? Tinubu, come over here and let's hear what you have for us. Let's meet a group of professionals.
You mean before or now that he's on the saddle? Before
it's still not too late, because we are going to have elections already there.
Yeah, I'm coming to that actually, because the permutations, if you like, or the calculations are already rearing their head. There are people who are concerned over some of the crises happening in some states, some key states. I've read somewhere where someone was making a postulation, that as part of the schemings ahead of 2027, we're beginning to see the polarization, if you like, of some key states that have the votes. He was citing example with Rivers, which is, a voting bloc, the crisis between Wike and Fubara and Kano, a political crisis, traditional crisis between Konkoso Ganduje and Sanusi Aminu, and in Kaduna now, another one rearing its head. Obasani and, El-Rufai, and the camps have been, the line has been drawn, so to speak. What will all of this do in terms of shaping the 2027 permutations?
Well, what we have to understand is that once he's there now, Tinubu, he's not likely to allow himself to be eroded out of power in 2027. This is the reality. He's not setting himself up to be a one-term president. He wants as much as possible.
Even with the one being put on the table, because this 6-year tenure, some see might be.
It's all part of the game, because you see, he's looking at the permutations as you and I are looking at it. He's now getting the feelers that, look, with the way things are going and with the feelings that people in the north have, because right now, and I'm going to be frank about it, Tinubu will be a hard sell candidate in the north for 2027, because nobody in their right minds would stand up and sell Tinubu.
You mean even with the weaponization of poverty would not work?
In fact, that's more the reason why they will not vote for him, because the reason for voting somebody is to say, look, I should have gained from something, and I've not gained. And then instead of gaining from what I have voted for, what I'm gaining, what the return is so meager that I'm even regretting.
But this is just 1 year into his administration.
But it is not. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. You are talking about a basket of tomatoes at 100,000 naira. The ram. We just had Eid al-Kabir now. The ram that you bought at 80,000.
Last year,
when the Salah came, you are now buying it at 200,000. Who will be able to? I had to eke out, some money to be able to buy a ram.
Inflationary Friend, perhaps.
And that everybody's attributing the hardship in this country to the policies, especially the removal of subsidies by Tinubu and his headstrong, disposition to say, look, we have to keep it like that. And he has not provided a plan for the country. Talk less for even the North, which gave him the power. So a lot of people are saying with bated breath that, look, let's see how Tinubu is going to come to ask for our votes.
That's too early, perhaps, to project.
No, but that's there. That's there. Look, already that's the feeling on the ground, and we'll be pretending to ourselves if we say that people of the North, and indeed a large portion of Nigeria, would want to return the Tinubu government because they have not seen anything but hardship, suffering, and poverty, more and more poverty. The statistics are there. Let's not kid ourselves about it.
Right. Okay. It's about time we have to, call the whole show to a date. I mean, we really appreciate your perspectives.
But let me make a point.
Oh, very quickly, maybe 30 seconds.
The point I'm going to make is that, I think Tinubu should see the handwriting on the wall. He's not doing well for Nigeria, and Nigerians are not happy with him. These are bare knuckles facts, and he should sit down and do the right things for Nigerians. Okay, otherwise, you should forget 2027.
Well, that would be very, very harsh, Thank you very much once again for coming. And viewers, this is a wrap on today's package of Daily Politics. You can join us tomorrow, where we'll be back with another interesting topic and personalities. Until then, I'm Shafi'u. Suleiman. Eid al-Kabir Mubarak once again.